Hey guys, Techman here with a video for you guys. In today's video, we're going to review the iPad Mini 3 or the third generation of this iPad going into 2022 and if this device is worth it or not. In this video, we're going to talk about a brief history about this iPad, a couple things you need to know about the hardware, the camera, the battery life, software performance, and then finally discuss if this iPad is worth it or not for you for different things like schoolwork, social media, graphic design, and much more. But before we dive into this video, if you guys are new to our channel, we do a lot of tech news reviews and giveaways, so make sure that like and subscribe button. Also, make sure you guys check out the links in the description section, which will include for discounted iPads that you can get off eBay and Amazon. So let's talk about the iPad Mini 3 going into 2022. Now, this iPad is going to be making 8 years almost later this year since it was released back in 2014 of October. So if you think about this device, it's been around for the ages here, and this device still works surprisingly. If you have one of this laying around and you hook it up to Wi-Fi, simply could be a device that powers on and simply works. And that's kind of goes to show with most Apple devices, they tend to work even if they're 8 years old almost. So that's going to be one thing. Now, the iPad here is the third generation of it. If you're comparing and looking in terms of a newer iPad, you're going to be probably looking at the 6th generation, which Apple recently has announced. So if you went to Apple's website, the only one that you can buy from their website right now, it's the 6th generation of this model here, which you're going to have to pay a lot more for, but that is available for purchase right now. So the third generation to 6th generation, 3 different generations, but there's a big difference in terms of the release date, and that's a big difference because the new mini, which was just released recently, does cost quite a lot comparing to this device, which you can pretty much get around $100 off eBay or Amazon instead of paying almost close to $499 for the Wi-Fi model and almost $649 for the cellular model. So this iPad here, as you can see, the third one also does support a cellular version of it. If you wanted to go Wi-Fi on the go, you also have that option there, but that's probably not something you're looking at. So in terms of actual price point, when it actually came out, you were paying about the same price that you would have been for the newer iPad, but because now it's only $100, it makes quite of a difference in terms of when you're looking at the device here. A couple things about the hardware of this device, which is really important to talk about, is that it does run on the A7 chip with 1 gig of RAM, very similar to the Mini 2 here. And this iPad sort of is a little disappointing for us, considering that this iPad was released a year later. The only real upgrade for this iPad was probably the fingerprint. That's probably the most that you got out of this iPad, was that Touch ID. Besides that, there doesn't seem to be like a lot for this iPad going on, which sort of really sucked because this iPad had a lot of potential here. The other thing is that this iPad doesn't go past iOS 12 because we're on iOS 15. iOS 12 makes things a little bit more difficult because most apps, when you try to download, what you run into this issue of that it requires iOS 13 or 14. Now, you would think that because the Mini 2 supported up to iOS 12, the Mini 3 would go at least to iOS 13, but it doesn't go to iOS 13. Again, big disappointment for this iPad not being able to go there. The other thing about this iPad is that it does have a camera here, so if you're looking for a camera, the camera isn't even an upgrade from the Mini 2 here. This camera is just that same 5 megapixel single camera on the back and then 1.2 megapixel on the front. So you got that tiny camera on the back and then that FaceTime camera or selfie camera. So you could take selfies, but they probably won't turn out that great compared to nowadays where the front camera is up to 12 megapixel here. And the other thing about this hardware of this device is that you can get it in pretty much 16 gig, 32 gig, 64 gig, and 128 gig, which is the most you can get. Very similar to the Mini 2, which is very surprising here. And when it comes to battery, it's similar battery size as the Mini 2 as well. It has that 6350 mAh battery, which lasts around 9 to 10 hours of simple multitasking, or simply even you can't even multitask, simply video playback. So if you're on a single app, you're probably going to get somewhere between 8 to 10 hours on this iPad here. But probably the biggest thing, again, when it comes to this iPad is performance. So when we talk about performance, it's simply going to be things like browsing around, using applications, opening up applications, doing the most simple things, even maybe using it for iMessages as another counterpart. But the thing about this iPad is that it doesn't support the Apple Pencil. So when you're looking to do it, use it for work or school, taking notes or something like that, it simply won't be good for you because you don't have Apple Pencil support, and it doesn't even support the keyboards as well from Apple. You can get a third-party keyboard like this one that we have here, hook it up. Even then, you might find some issues with the keyboard because of sort of compatibility, or sometimes when you type in, it might be slow to recognize the keystroke, which again creates this sort of performance issue for this iPad. But in it all, because this iPad is stuck on iOS 12, it simply makes our life a lot more difficult. And the reason why is because when you're looking to download newer apps nowadays, you just simply can't. The apps that you see that we have downloaded here so far, we had to use a special method that which we discussed in another video, which leave in the description section, which you can follow along. If you have a newer Apple device, simply use an account that can download the apps that you need to, and then go here to the App Store and then look under your settings here of purchase history, which will allow you to download the same apps, an older version of it, of course, not the newer version of it. So that's something you can do, which we explain a little bit more in depth in another video here. But in it all, is the iPad Mini 3 worth it in 2022 or not? Or simple answer is going to be it's not worth it any longer because of not being able to update past iOS 12, and bunch of apps that require you to use nowadays require iOS 13, 14, or even 15 for that matter of fact. So older iOS makes this app pretty much usable in a lot of ways, and that's sort of something we wish Apple would have done, allowed this iPad to be supported on iOS at least 13, because the Mini 2 was on iOS 12. So that's going to be our simple answer. Now, if you're looking for things like work, school, even social media and live video streaming, things like that, or drawing, this iPad simply isn't worth it for you. What it's going to be worth it. So this iPad, if you really want to know what it's worth it for, it's probably worth it for a younger kid that simply doesn't mind waiting for apps to download and take time whenever you're opening it up, or simply using it for basic games like 2D games that like Subway Surfers, maybe things like that. Of course, those kind of games will work, but when you're really looking to use the iPad for schoolwork, things like the Google suite of applications, they're really hard to work with, and if they do work, they're simply too slow for you to even utilize it, because when you're working for school or work, you want to make sure a device that simply loads things up for you at a decent pace, which this iPad simply can't deliver with that 1 gig of RAM. So hopefully this video is helpful for you guys. As we mentioned, again, our answer is no, it's not really worth it unless it's for a younger child or someone that doesn't mind waiting and not having a bunch of apps not working correctly for you. But again, we want to hear from you guys. What your thoughts are on the Mini 3 here. Leave a comment in the comment section. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time.